Good evening, good afternoon, and of course, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first World Emerging Security Forum hosted by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea. My name is Jessica Lee, and today I've given the honor of being your MC for this very special occasion. Thank you. Thank you very much. And today's forum will be held under the theme of the future of international cooperation in response to emerging security threats. For 2 days, today and tomorrow, the 2021 WESF will be held both online and offline according to the quarantine guidelines to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And it will be live streamed online on the official YouTube channel of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea. The first World Emerging Security Forum is held to share awareness of the current situation of emerging security threats and to cultivate a consensus on the future direction of transnational cooperation based on a systematic evaluation of our achievements and limitations in responding to emerging security threats. And starting with today's opening ceremony and session 1, we will have a special round table session and session 2 and session 3 tomorrow. So we'd like to ask for your active participation until the very end. And for your information, our forum is being held under the strict COVID-19 prevention measures. All staff and participants at the venue here check their temperatures before entering the hall, and we've done disinfection thoroughly as well. And we also have installed a screen between our presenters on the stage. So ladies and gentlemen, please understand that our speakers were present without having their masks on. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Then without further ado, let us begin the opening ceremony of the first World Emerging Security Forum. First and foremost, ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to introduce Mr. Chung Eui-yong, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea, for his opening remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome him with a big round of applause.
Good evening, President Thomas Hendrik Ilves, Chairman Klaus Schwab. We have him on the internet. Chairman Eric Schmidt and Vice Chairman Wei Xiaojun, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I thank you very much for joining us in this inaugural meeting of the World Emerging Security Forum. And would like to invite you to take the long view, both in looking back at the past as well as looking ahead into the future on what security has meant and should mean to us going forward. Security threats have been traditionally perceived as physical conflict involving the use of weapons. Looking back, however, it is striking to note that the level of military violence among countries has steadily come down. In terms of the frequency of physical harm that human beings inflicted on each other, even accounting for the horrible wars of the past century, there has been a steady but clear decline in violence. There are many factors that contributed to this trend, but the key ones would be the rise of literacy and education, eradication of poverty, and the spread of democracy and respect for human rights. We can observe a clear correlation between the improvement in these standards and the rise in the human faculty to resolve differences through peaceful means. In particular, the unmistakable trend for democratic countries to not fight each other, a phenomenon that is famously known as democratic peace, reminds us again the value and universality of democratic principles, not only for domestic governance, but also to ensure international peace and security. But we are gathered here today because despite this progress, we still do not feel completely safe and secure. And when I say we, I mean mainly us, more as individuals than as citizens of our respective countries. Indeed, the concept of human security that has been developed in recent years captures the importance of addressing the threats that fall outside the traditional boundaries of interstate military conflict. All of us have been deeply impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic for the past 2 years. More than 5 million people have lost their lives to the pandemic in less than 2 years. More than double the military casualties of the World War II. I only hope that this will be a temporary setback in human history and that in the coming months we will recover to return to a new normalcy. Today I had a virtual meeting with foreign ministers of 14 Pacific Island countries. They all expressed their deep concerns about the ongoing threats stemming from the pandemic. But they all argued that the biggest and the most imminent and long-term threat comes from climate change and dealing with its effects, ranging from extreme weather events, rising sea level, and shrinking biodiversity, all of which will uproot the way of life as we know it. They said in one voice that it is not the future that is at stake. It is the present which is at stake. Then there are the risks that come hand in hand with the benefits we enjoy from a connected and automated world. Our threats to cybersecurity range from the mundane crash of our mobile phones and computers to a system-wide failure that could cripple our infrastructure. Korea is recently suffering from an abrupt disruption in supply chain of previously not well-known urea solution. Many automobile makers around the world is busy dealing with the sudden decrease of supply of semiconductors. These are just a few of the emerging security issues that we felt deserved a dedicated forum where we can try to make better sense of what lies ahead, both in terms of the threat and, more importantly, how we should respond. If the threat is global, the response must also be global. Unfortunately, in our ongoing collective response to COVID and to climate change, we have seen how difficult it can be to let go of our state-centric habits and biases to be truly collective. We have also come to realize that today's security threats know no border drawn by man. No one can be free and safe until everyone is free and safe. Emerging security threats cannot be resolved by the efforts of any one country alone. This is not to say that nation-states are irrelevant. On the contrary, each government has a critical role to play in mobilizing civil society, academia, and business, as well as making the connection across borders. We need to learn to become more flexible and nimble to ensure that the right player at the right time, at the right place, can make the optimal intervention against these emerging threats. Governments have the authority and the responsibility, and therefore should also have the humility to make these hard choices. Today, as we are joined by leading experts of various nationalities and specialties, I hope we can agree on one thing, that solidarity and cooperation is the only way to tackle new challenges in international peace and security. In May of last year, President Moon Jae-in declared Korea's commitment to take on a leading role in constructing a new world order based on solidarity and cooperation in the post-pandemic era. And this forum is part of our efforts to implement the commitment. Sun Tzu, the famous strategist and philosopher of ancient China, said that if you know your enemy and if you know yourself, you will win all 100 of 100 battles. I hope the conference today and tomorrow will serve as one of many occasions for us to better understand our emerging threats and to explore how best we can realign ourselves to come up with a truly collective and effective response. Thank you very much.
Minister, thank you very much for your meaningful words. Thank you. So our minister said that solidarity and cooperation is the only way to tackle the new challenges in peace and security. And the Republic of Korea will lead the way in resolving these emerging security threats as well. Thank you, Minister, once again. And then there will be some congratulatory remarks from honorable guests from abroad who could share with us their insights on emerging security threats. So first of all, we will have a video of the congratulatory remark delivered by Klaus Schwab, founder and executive director of the World Economic Forum. So he has prepared us a very meaningful video. So ladies and gentlemen, let's get our attention to the screen with a big round of applause.
Dear Minister Chung, distinguished participants and friends, I'm grateful to be invited to speak here at the inaugural World Emerging Security Forum. I commend the efforts of the government of the Republic of Korea and in particular the initiative of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in bringing together leading voices to discuss the current landscape for emerging security issues and leverage multilateral cooperation to build stronger resilience for the international community. Korea's role as a trusted and able interlocutor between East and West and bridging emerging and developed economies is now important more than ever in an increasingly polarized world. I would like to begin by sharing my perspective on the global security outlook. My main concern in this regard are the growing threats to human security we are facing from multiple fronts. First, many families, workers, and small businesses around the world continue to face economic insecurity. This stems from an unequitable economic recovery in the wake of the pandemic, within and between countries. Most worryingly, in a large part of the developing world, a low COVID vaccination rate is still putting many people at risk of spiraling into poverty. Without a global vaccination drive, the poor and vulnerable will suffer the most in years to come. But all over the world, we must be concerned about the knock-on economic effects of the pandemic. Even in countries that introduced massive economic and monetary stimuli, unemployment, bankruptcies, inflation, or debt obligations may worsen as those stimuli are scaled back. All of this leaves us in a very fragile economic state. According to the World Economic Forum's Global Risk Perception Survey, which was conducted in September, just 11% of respondents believe the world's economy will accelerate over the coming years. Second, in many countries, the pandemic exacerbated nationalistic tendencies. Those tendencies are exposing vulnerable groups within society to heightened societal insecurity in the form of discrimination, marginalization, xenophobia, or even political violence. Migrants and refugees are facing an especially concerning and worrying outlook. It may sound counterintuitive, but those nationalistic tendencies are not good for the social cohesion, even among citizens of a given country. They are dividing, not uniting. In our survey, social cohesion erosion, in fact, appears as a top concern for the next 2 years. Lastly, and more people are becoming at risk of environmental security because of the worsening effects of climate change, extreme heat and droughts, severe rain and flooding, and growing resource scarcity. As many as 216 million people globally could be displaced by climate change towards 2050. And once more, environmental risks were perceived by the World Economic Forum Global Risk Perception Surveys respondents as the most concerning and the most severe of the next decade. It is in this context that I would like to share 3 reasons why the World Emerging Security Forum is so relevant and opportune. First, global threats, because of their nature, must be met with global responses. Financial crises, global warming, pandemics, cyber attacks, and I could go on. Those are all borderless risks whose damage has the potential to spread fast and wide, regardless of where they originate. The world has learned this the hard way after the 2008-2009 financial crisis, the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, and an unrelenting planetary emergency. However, this does not mean that our efforts to combat those crises and risks are meaningless and futile. The contrary is true. Global crises have epicenters and tipping points. If countries at those crucial junctures swiftly warn the world about them and act as first responders, their global spread may be prevented or limited. This is the reason why the World Economic Forum supports the World Emergency Security Forum by creating an inclusive, neutral, and transparent global platform focused on emerging threats. The World Emerging Security Forum can represent truly a global early warning system. Second, we need eyes everywhere to spot a bushfire before it becomes a wildfire. But we also need long and strong pipes to channel water to the fire quickly. This brings me to the second purpose of the World Emerging Security Forum, establishing links between the diverse actors here today to prevent cooperative mechanisms from fragmenting in times of crisis. Because global threats are borderless and can originate anywhere, it is in every actor's best interest to participate in international, global cooperation systems. Infectious diseases are a case in point. The world has achieved remarkable progress towards mitigating COVID-19 through a combination of international cooperation for vaccine development in record time and national vaccination programs. But only a handful of countries have vaccinated more than 70% of their population, while in more than 50 countries, vaccination remains below 10%. As we have learned from AIDS, malaria, or tuberculosis, no country is fully immune until every country is immune. The same is true for climate change. No country will be safe from devastating weather, natural resource scarcity, or the damages of pollution on human health until the whole world is committed to international climate action. Third, while the world has been struggling for decades with the familiar threats of climate change, cybercrime, or pandemics, the reality is that new unintended consequences may result from those threats that we are still unaware of, while even new threats may emerge altogether. Global risks are not static. They evolve with and are a consequence of human activities. This is the third reason why I applaud the World Emerging Security Forum, its future orientation. International cooperation has, is, and will be constantly tested during crisis. So, it must also keep evolving. We may not know what, when, or where the next global threat will emerge. But we also know that staying vigilant for early warning signs, maintaining a constant flow of information, and ensuring that different voices are heard will be critical to address the threat when the time comes. As I conclude my remarks, I want to commend you again, Minister Chung, for taking the initiatives to host this World Emerging Security Forum. After the crisis the world has faced in recent years, this multilateral forum is a welcome antidote against rising isolationism. At the World Economic Forum, too, we continue to bring the world together to create a better world for all and better respond to future security threats. It is why we will convene again in January, in person, in Davos, under the banner, working together, restoring trust. And throughout our history, we have always advocated stakeholder responsibility, public-private cooperation, and global cooperation. Those pillars continue to be the basis of what we do and to be the crucial building blocks for creating a better global future. I wish you all the best at this forum, and I look forward to working together with you all in the future and restore the trust in our common future.
Thank you very much for your insight and meaningful words. And next, we will have very special guests who are joining us here on site. It's my great honor and privilege to introduce Mr. Toomas Hendrik Ilves, former President of the Republic of Estonia, for his congratulatory remarks. So His Excellency will be coming up to the stage. And ladies and gentlemen, please welcome him with a big round of applause.
Well, good evening. Let me first begin by thanking the Foreign Minister and the Forum for inviting me here to Seoul, a place that I've been to several times before. I will actually talk very briefly about actually more traditional threats in a new environment. Estonia, my country, and Korea are very successful countries, democratic countries, that both live in a rough neighborhood. We are not safe from all kinds of security threats the way maybe some other countries are. Now, I want you to think about security threats. If you remember the movie 2001, A Space Odyssey, there was a big moment where the pre-human ape discovers he has a weapon, and he can actually take a bone and kill someone else by using a bone to hit someone on the head. That was symbolically the beginning of force and threats to security in a kinetic world. As you recall, Newton's second law of dynamics is that force equals mass times acceleration. And that has been true of conflict and war since that hypothetical ape, through throwing rocks, through shooting spears and arrows, all the way to bullets and tanks and missiles. War has been always kinetic. Now, I would say with the turn of the millennium, we have reached a new phase. From our own experience in my country and lots of other countries, we see that you don't need kinetic force to threaten or to destroy or overthrow a country, basically to attack the fundamental security of a nation. You can do it by hacking. You can do it by doing a DDoS attack, as happened in my country in 2007, and render all crucial websites and banks inaccessible. You can do a SCADA, or System Control and Data Acquisition attack, as happened with Stuxnet, and you can basically shut down an entire program. Now, what we should realize now is that we have entered basically at the same time as the new millennium, an era in which we don't have to, or we cannot only worry about things such as tanks, missiles, and bombs. We actually, if you think through the security environment, then in the future, in any future war, the tank is part of a mop-up operation. The war will be won long before any bullets are fired, any missiles are flown. It will be won by shutting down countries, by having no electricity, by having no mobile phones, by having no military communications. So basically what this means is that we have to rethink our entire approach to security. Right now, all of our countries put huge amounts of money into hardware, new weapons, new defenses. Well, in the future, we will have to do that, but we will have to do something else, which is develop a new form of security thinking. When you get to a point in which war and conflict and at least state-on-state attacks are no longer a matter of mass times distance divided by time, because there is none of that, you realize that the geography of threat and security has changed dramatically. It is there's a microsecond difference between an attack on Estonia and an attack on Korea. It's just a microsecond. That's it. And there are no measurable, at least, mass to the electrons. However, what we have seen is you can shut down countries. You can alter the political environment of a country, as we have seen several times in the past several years, or you can alter public views on vaccination, all through disinformation, through social media, not through spreading chemical biological weapons, but by making people not want to be vaccinated. Now, I won't talk for long, but let me just say that there are other implications of this which also offer some solutions. For one, what this development in security policy has done is that it has eliminated geography, which up till now has been the primary concern of security thinking, because you had kinetic weapons. You knew where weapons were coming from or missiles were coming from. You were worried about your neighbors. Now we have to be worried about everybody. On the other hand, it gives us new opportunities, and this is my sort of parting thought for my introduction, is that we can rethink the whole concept of alliances and get beyond geography for alliances. What is NATO? It's the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. People say, why isn't Japan there? Why isn't Korea? Why isn't New Zealand or Australia? Well, that's because none of those countries are in the North Atlantic. It's the North Atlantic Treaty Organization because of bomber range, fighter refueling, tank logistics, troop transport. Those will be irrelevant in a future conflict, or they will be relevant only after the conflict. So what I would say, one thing we should do is start thinking about an alliance of liberal democracies, those countries that have free and fair elections, that respect fundamental rights and freedoms and human rights, rule of law, and those countries are not geographically isolated in one place. And I would say that our new security policy thinking for the traditional threats of state-to-state conflict needs to rethink itself in this era where we're faced with digital threats, yet we also have absolutely new digital opportunities for bringing liberal democracies together. So I hope people will think about these possibilities. I would welcome and love to see countries like mine together with Korea in an alliance of democracies for defense. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your very warm word, and thank you for visiting Korea to attend today's forum. And I believe your presence makes this forum all the more meaningful. Thank you once again. With that, please allow me to introduce Mr. Eric Schmidt, who was the CEO of Google and former chair of the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence, for his words of congratulation. So he sent us a video of his remarks. So ladies and gentlemen, let's get our attention to the screen with a big round of applause.
Good evening to everybody in Seoul. I'm honored to have this invitation to speak at the World Emerging Security Forum. I've traveled to Korea many, many times, and I frankly just love Korea. I love the people, I love the culture, and I particularly love the food. And I also love the innovation agenda that you all have established over the last decades that I have been there. What you've been able to do, for example, with semiconductors, and in particular with the leadership of Samsung, has been extraordinary. And the fact that Samsung and then TSMC over in Taiwan are the two leading semiconductor manufacturers at the state of the art is a tremendous achievement for Korea, given how difficult this kind of stuff is. What I wanted to do is talk a little bit about security. I was the chair of the U.S. National Security Commission for the last 3 years, and we produced a voluminous report a few months ago, which you can read at nscai.gov. And in it, we track the progress of AI technology and its use in national security. The first thing that we find is that China has decided to emphasize AI at almost over everything else. And in particular, there are more PhDs, more papers, and more students than in the West. So we know they're coming and we know they're doing well at it. I judge we to be slightly ahead of them, but not very far. And I think there's every reason to believe that we're going to have a contest between the Chinese system for AI and the Western. And I'm quite convinced that South Korea will be on the Western side for many, many, many reasons. The important thing that I can tell you is that you're going to have to embrace these technologies and run as fast as you can. I mean, and I know you can do it. I was studying COVID. I spent a lot of time looking at COVID around the world, and the best country in terms of COVID performance by far at this point has been South Korea. You're a democracy, and yet you managed to get through the necessary restrictions. You didn't politicize things. You took a position of health, and you have lots of good compliance with the appropriate public policy rules. That has enabled you to spring back in a way that almost no other country can. And I think there's every reason to believe that with your vaulted energy, this extraordinary innovation that exists within Korea, and especially with a new focus on software, you'll get there. When I started going to Korea, Korea was largely a specialized zone. The technologies didn't work with others, and there was an obsession with gaming. And out of that gaming technology came incredible VR startups. And also out of that self-contained nature, everything got integrated. And so all of your phones are now what we use here in the United States, et cetera. I have every reason to believe that you can build global platforms in South Korea based on AI that will change the world. What we found in our report is that we have a talent shortage. America has a talent shortage. I'm sure you do as well. We need to get more people who understand artificial intelligence in the government. We also found that it was very important to maintain our leadership ahead of China. That's why Samsung's leadership is so crucial to what we need globally in the West. The innovation that you all provide needs to be doubled and doubled again so we can build these new platforms. We need to do partnerships around emerging security, and you need to be part of these democratic initiatives, so-called D10, T12, of like-minded nations that want to collaborate to build systems of AI that are responsible in their use and reflect democratic values. That is not the values of an autocracy. And these include the values of lack of surveillance and the ability to have free speech, and things that I know my friends in South Korea really, really care a lot about. In my case, I felt so strongly about this that I have created a successor to the AI Commission, which is called the Special Competitive Studies Project, which I'm funding, run by some partners of mine. And what they're going to do is try to establish a real focus on how do we make Western-based global platforms the coin of the realm. And I say coin because money matters as well. And there's every reason to believe that these platforms that we're going to build, starting from AI, including quantum and others, will create enormous next generation of value. I was fortunate in my career to end up in one of the companies that has become the defining company of the last age. The next companies, and indeed the established players, are all going to compete to establish these new AI platforms. I felt so strongly about it, I wrote a book with Dr. Henry Kissinger and Dan Huttenlocher called The Age of AI and Our Human Future. And I encourage you to read it when it's available in Korea. The important thing about my message today is that what you're doing is working. We need to have even more investment in technology, especially for the security of South Korea, especially given the threats from North Korea, and especially with this brutal competition that we're going to be seeing from China. What I know is that working together, South Korea and the United States and all of our like-minded universities, we can win. And I want to win with you. Thank you so, so much for letting me speak today. I look forward to coming back to Korea very, very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and insights. Thank you once again. And next, we'd like to invite Mr. Wei Xiaojun, Vice President of the China Semiconductor Industry Association, to deliver his words of congratulations. So he's joining us in real time to give us his remarks. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming him.
Thank you for the introduction. Dear Mr. Trump, ladies and gentlemen, good evening, good morning, and good afternoon. Thank you to the forum for giving me this opportunity to say few words. In the past 2 decades, the information technology and the industry represented by internet and the mobile communication, especially combination of the two, mobile internet, have greatly promoted development of the global economy. The most important achievement during this period was the unification of technological standards. The unification has brought about the globalization of products, markets, industries, and the supply chain, reduced the cost of information products and services, and greatly promotes the prosperity of the global economy. However, everything has both positive and negative sides. The development of information technology not only brings benefits to all mankind, but also raises concerns such as privacy protection, national security, as well as the impact of long-term use of the internet on the teenagers' health. Obviously, it's impossible for us to live without information technology, without internet, without mobile communication. And these challenges can only be solved through technological innovation and the global cooperation, not by any country alone. I think this is the important significance of this forum. Thank you so much for inviting me and wish the forum a complete success. Thank you.
Mr. Xiao Zhen, thank you very much for your time today, and thank you for your meaningful words. And once again, we would like to extend our sincere gratitude to all of our distinguished guests. Thank you once again. And I believe Minister Chung Eui-yong and other 4 speakers' remarks suggested the importance of seeking multidimensional and integrated cooperation measures against not only health, cyberspace, or any technologies, but also various other emerging security threats and the possibility of developing international cooperation and also solidarity. I also believe that concrete measures will be explored through this first World Emerging Security Forum. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again. And we'll now take a commemorative photo with honorable guests who are joining us today. And those who are watching this forum via online platforms, please take a short break and please come back at 7 p.m. Korean Standard Time for joining our session 1. Thank you very much.